divine chastisement of God.
It's not a game, not even a war. Beyond rain, beyond storm, beyond Katrina. You ain't never seen a natural disaster.
No one can make an intelligent decision without being properly informed. This is why this world wants to control the media. This is why media hype can take you up, take you down. So you don't know anymore who's really good, because the media can make a wicked man look good and make a good man look evil. That is why.
Good evening, everybody. On this cold, wintry day in Denver, Colorado, you are watching the Final Call News Hour. I'm your host, Herman Muhammad. The Final Call News Hour is the partner of the Final Call newspaper and the Final Call online edition that you can visit here at digital.finalcall.com. The Final Call newspaper is the most widely read, circulated, Black-owned and operated publication not only in this country but in the world, and also serves as the communications organ for the Nation of Islam. Again, my name is Herman Muhammad and I'm your host for this evening's program. This evening, we're going to get right into it. We're going to be coming out of volume number 34, issue number 8. Which reads, #Ferguson, Ground Zero for America's Assault on Blacks. Again, this is the latest edition of the Final Call newspaper. #Ferguson, Ground Zero for America's Assault on Blacks. Before we get into the goings on in Ferguson, we wanted to offer our condolences to the family of our late mayor who just passed away, Brother Marion Berry. Let me give you a picture of our brother who recently passed away. And in this edition of the Final Call newspaper, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan offered his condolences on page 23, and this is a statement from the minister regarding the passing of the Honorable Mayor Marion S. Berry Jr. And the minister writes, "We have lost a giant in the struggle with the passing of Mayor Marion S. Berry Jr. of Washington, D.C., a man who lived a life of struggle for the elevation and liberation of our people. No human being passes this life without sin, and that is why we have a God of beneficence, forgiveness, and who is oft returning to mercy. Sin is of the flesh, and it is that which goes down into the grave, but the good that we do lives beyond our physical bodies. Surely Mayor Berry lives on. We thank Allah for the life and work of our brother, and the best way to honor his legacy is to continue the struggle for the complete freedom, justice, and equality for our people and all those who are deprived of the essentials of life. Our condolences go out to his family, his loved ones, and to all who feel as we do about the loss of our brother. We offer love, honor, respect, and thanksgiving for such a man who has left us with so much good to build upon. Sincerely, Louis Farrakhan, your brother and servant." Praise be to Allah. That's the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in regards to our beloved Mayor of Washington, D.C., twice elected mayor, who passed recently. And I wanted to say, just in regards to those of us who have something negative to say about Brother Marion S. Berry, our mayor, and particularly those, I saw a headline that TMZ put out, and it said something along the lines of "crackhead mayor dies" or some ridiculousness like that. And I want to say to our people that whenever they disrespect one of our leaders, a brother who stood up on behalf of our cause, we need to really stand against them. Don't let the enemies of our rise dictate your feelings and your thoughts about our people. And that especially includes Brother Marion S. Barry, who really opened up the doors to our people, the Nation of Islam, and black people all over the world in 1995 when he laid a welcome mat in Washington, D.C. for the Million Man March. I mean, I'm forever thankful and grateful to Allah for that, brother, for doing that great work, man, when no one else would do such a thing. You know, so let's just be careful about how we think about our people because the enemy says something about them. Like Minister Farrakhan said in his statement, we all make mistakes, we all have sin, but this man's good far outweighs his sin. So may Allah be pleased with Brother Marion S. Berry. Again, we're coming out of this issue, volume number 34, number 8, hashtag Ferguson. And we're going to get right into the first article, which appears on page 2, and it's written by our editor as well as J.A. Salam and some of the Final Call staff, and it reads, Ferguson explodes. Is America next? Fear that a racial conflagration could consume the country. It's the latest edition of the Final Call newspaper. And again, pick that up at digital.finalcall.com. Now let me go on and start with this, and then I'll give a little bit of commentary. But this is very important. And it's important to note that we're going to have our beloved editor on, inshallah, within the next couple of days to talk about what's going on the ground in Ferguson, because he's there and he's doing a wonderful job on behalf of the Final Call newspaper. It reads, Ferguson, Missouri. Physical fires and fiery passions were ignited here with the decision not to charge Officer Darren Wilson in the killing of unarmed black teenager Michael Brown. On the 108th day after the 18-year-old shooting, chaos exploded at night as many felt the failure to indict the white officer was another sign of a war on black youth and an assault on the black community. It is a too often repeated message that your life is worthless in the context of the power of the state versus the individual. You can be exterminated without impunity. The article continues on page 32. It goes on, dealing with the story about our brother President Obama. President Obama took to the air minutes after the November 24th television announcement of the decision. He urged respect for the rule of law and called for using the Brown death to deal with long-standing problems. The president said he instructed Attorney General Eric Holder to work to build better relations between police departments and communities, including proper training for fair application of laws, creating community alliances, and having police forces reflect the race of the communities that they work in. Criminal justice reform is also needed, the president said. We have to recognize that this is not just an issue for Ferguson, it is an issue for America, said President Obama. And let me stop right there. Just to talk a little bit about what's going on and the impact this Ferguson piece has, because the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan spoke the Saturday before the Ferguson decision at Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland, and he said it, and Brother Richard points it out in this article. 2 days before the Ferguson explosion, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan of the Nation of Islam warned Ferguson was ready to blow up. The injustices that blacks have faced are growing intolerable, and black youth are growing as angry as unarmed Palestinians battling heavily armed Israeli soldiers, the minister said in a November 22nd address at Morgan State University in Baltimore. Leaders who defend the oppressive white power structure cannot lead black youth or black people, said Minister Farrakhan. And if I may humbly suggest, that includes you, President Obama. You can't lead our youth if you're going to defend this particular power structure. And he said it's not just a Ferguson problem, but it's an American problem. Let me take it a step further, because we have to stop pussyfooting around and call it the way that it is. And it's not a Ferguson problem. It's a problem of white supremacy. It's a problem where our youth are being slaughtered. Black youth are being slaughtered. Make no mistake about it. This is a war on black youth, just like the article suggests in the very beginning. We can talk about Michael Brown and Ferguson, but we also have to talk about Trayvon Martin. We also have to talk about Renisha McBride. We also have to talk about Marvin Booker here in Denver. We also have to talk about Oscar Grant. We have to talk about Amadou Diallo. We have to talk about Sean Bell. We have to talk about all of these different young brothers and sisters who have been slain at the hands of police or others who are murdering them just because they are black, and just because the black man, black youth in particular, have been made out to be some sort of boogeyman in this white supremacist system, to where white people in authority feel that they are justified in murdering our young black youth. We got to call it like it is, man, and stop playing with it. We got to stop playing with it, because our people are dying and we need solutions. And let me say, I'm gonna read this, and then we'll go on a little bit further, because I'm passionate about this, because these are our youth, brothers and sisters. This is what this is all about. And I want to talk about another injustice that a lot of people aren't hip to in regards to the grand jury before we end this broadcast. But the article goes on in terms of talks about angry expressions across the U.S. Because it's not just Ferguson, but it's all over the country. Demonstrations grew nationwide throughout the late evening into the night as anger grew. Protesters vented frustrations in Times Square in New York City, stopped traffic on Lakeshore Drive in Chicago, and in the streets of Oakland, California, Seattle, and other cities. Hundreds marched in protest towards the White House in Washington, D.C., and many with their hand and arms held up. Crowds gathered in Philadelphia, Denver, Colorado, and more than 120 vigils and gatherings were planned and executed. The article goes on. Everyone here has said that the only way to get justice for Mike Brown was to continue to fight back and organize and build a movement, start with and center on this particular case, but challenge institutionalized racism and white supremacy in the criminal justice system all throughout the country. This is a brother named Mr. Preisner who made that quote. So it's very important that this is the key. Challenge institutionalized racism and white supremacy in the criminal justice system all throughout the country. We have to realize, again, this isn't just a Ferguson problem, and this isn't just a American problem. Actually, it deals with worldwide racism and white supremacy. Worldwide racism and white supremacy makes it okay for Darren Wilson to murder our brother, to shoot his gun 12 times, hitting Michael Brown 6 or 7 times, an unarmed teenager, and then have the nerve to get on television and call the young man a demon, and to further feed these so-called stereotypes that Mike Brown was so big and so strong that it was like a 5-year-old holding on to Hulk Hogan. I mean, just examine that. Just examine that. Just feeding into the fear, into the stereotypes that our young black people are super predators, super Negroes, super niggas who are preying on white people. And so it's okay, it's justified to kill them. That's what Darren Wilson did. I'm going to say it, he's guilty and he deserves to be prosecuted. And we want to jump, like I said, jump into this piece with regard to the grand jury and how this was a serious miscarriage of justice. Because we know that Michael Brown was unarmed. We know that he was 20 feet away from Darren Wilson when he was shot however many times. We know that alone should have been enough to bring charges against Darren Wilson, which is why the protests are going on in #Ferguson, right? But I want to expose something that I came across online that was put out on MSNBC by a reporter by the name of Lawrence O'Donnell. And he did a wonderful piece dealing with the affidavit that was released with regard to the grand jury that handled the Michael Brown case. And I'm going to give you this information. And I want you to look it up. I want you to research it for yourself so that you don't think that Brother Herman in the Final Call Newshour and the Final Call newspaper is telling some sort of lies or just trying to fan the flames. But I think it's very important that we should know this information. Now, this site is called, that this information came from, it's called addictinginfo.org. Addictinginfo.org. And the article is entitled, Darren Wilson's grand jurors were told to base decision on law ruled unconstitutional in 1985. And again, this deals with a report by Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC that was done this past Wednesday. And here's a copy of what I'm going to read to you. Darren Wilson's grand jurors were told to base decision on law ruled unconstitutional in 1985. On Wednesday's last word, Lawrence O'Donnell highlighted a chilling fact about the Ferguson grand jury proceedings. And here's a quote from Mr. O'Donnell. With prosecutors like this, Darren Wilson never really needed a defense lawyer. O'Donnell found a glaring problem with instructions the grand jury was given directly before Officer Darren Wilson testified. Jurors were instructed to base their decisions on an outdated law that was ruled unconstitutional decades ago. I'm going to pass, this is a quote from the assistant prosecutor. I'm going to pass out to you all. You are all going to receive a copy of a statute. It is section 563046. And it says law enforcement officers use of force in making an arrest. And it is the law on what is permissible, what force is permissible, and when in making an arrest by a police officer. Assistant District Attorney Kathy Alizada told jurors as she handed them a copy of a 1979 Missouri law that O'Donnell points out was ruled unconstitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court in 1985 before Alizada's legal career began and before Officer Wilson was even born. O'Donnell went on to say, but it was helpful to Officer Darren Wilson that the assistant district attorney handed the jury an old unconstitutional law which said incorrectly that it is legal to shoot fleeing suspects simply because they are fleeing. By handing the grand jury that unconstitutional law, the assistant district attorney dramatically lowered the standard by which Darren Wilson could be judged. She was telling the grand jury with that document that Darren Wilson had the right, the legal right to shoot and kill Michael Brown as soon as Michael Brown started running away from him. She was telling the grand jury that Darren Wilson didn't have to feel his life threatened at all by Michael Brown. She was taking the hurdle that Darren Wilson had to get over in his testimony and flattening it. She was making it impossible for Darren Wilson to fail in front of this grand jury. The portion of the law that was ruled unconstitutional says that an officer is justified in the use of such physical force as he or she reasonably believes is immediately necessary to effect the arrest or to prevent the escape from custody. Again, it reads that an officer is justified in the use of such physical force as he or she reasonably believes is immediately necessary to effect the arrest or to prevent the escape from custody. Man, now, what does this mean? This is a statute, and again, this statute was declared unconstitutional in 1985. But let me talk about the purpose of a grand jury. The purpose of a grand jury is for a prosecutor to frame a case in front of this grand jury that will show that there is enough evidence or probable cause to bring this person to trial, to prosecute this particular person. A grand jury is not for the defense. A grand jury is about a prosecutor making a case to bring charges against a person to bring them to trial. Understand that. So when Darren Wilson appeared before the grand jury, this particular prosecutor gave in a statute that said basically that the officer, a 1979 statute that basically said that an officer was justified in the use of such physical force as he or she reasonably believes is immediately necessary to effect the arrest or to prevent the escape from custody. In other words, if Michael Brown was fleeing from the officer had a right to shoot Michael Brown. Again, this is the statute that the assistant prosecutor presented to the grand jury that was declared unconstitutional in 1985. Now, she came back because she knew that the transcripts were going to be released and told them later that part of the statute that she introduced had been declared unconstitutional. This was right before they decided not to indict Darren Wilson. But by that time, the seed had already been planted into the jury's mind, or the grand jury's mind, that they could not prosecute Darren Wilson. I hope that's clear. And so the process was tainted from the beginning. She tried to clean it up just to make sure that she wouldn't be disbarred at the end, but the seed had already been planted to the point where Darren Wilson was never going to be prosecuted. Understand that. So that's a travesty of justice. And again, look that up, man. Addicted. Let me give you the website again. And you can go to MSNBC or go to at Lawrence O'Donnell on Twitter, and I'm sure you can find this information. He posted addictinginfo.org, addictinginfo.org, and you can find that article and you can find that video of Lawrence O'Donnell's report. But I just wanted to say that and add that to the story, because that's something that the media really is largely ignoring in regards to the injustice that was perpetrated against Michael Brown in not bringing Darren Wilson to be prosecuted. And then this devil had the audacity to say that Michael Brown was like a beast or a demon. Yeah, unbelievable. So I just wanted to bring that in front and put that on your minds and talk about Ferguson and what's going on and what are the solutions. That white supremacy is at the root of this piece. White supremacy is at the root of all of our brothers and sisters who have been murdered at the hands of these so-called police officers. And I just wanted to talk about some solutions very briefly. Because the question is asked, where are the Muslims in regard to Ferguson? Are we out there protesting? Well, I'll put it to you like this. The Muslims in the Nation of Islam, we believe that we have the solution to every problem that our people face, including this police brutality. The question is whether or not we want to hear it or whether or not we want to entertain real and viable solutions. We're not on the front lines of protest in these cities, whether it be Ferguson or whether it be Denver or whether it be Philly or whether it be New York, because we don't do that. Our policy is we don't do that. We are separatists in our view of how this thing should go. Islam comes after all else fails. So the Nation of Islam is really has solutions, but our solutions are going to come when our people finally look and see that what you're doing is not working. And let me just give you a solution. And this appears on page 39 of the Final Call newspaper. And it's the very back page of the Final Call newspaper. And it's point number 4 of the Muslim program, What the Muslims Want. And it reads like this. Get ready. It's a real solution. We want our people in America whose parents or grandparents were descendants from slaves to be allowed to establish a separate state or territory of their own, either on this continent or elsewhere. We believe that our former slave masters are obligated to provide such land and that the area must be fertile and minerally rich. We believe that our former slave masters are obligated to maintain and supply our needs in this separate territory for the next 20 to 25 years, until we are able to produce and supply our own needs. Since we cannot get along, and this is an addendum, since we cannot get along, listen, since we cannot get along with them in peace and equality, after giving them 400 years of our sweat and blood, and receiving in return some of the worst treatment human beings have ever experienced, we believe our contributions to this land and the suffering forced upon us by white America justifies our demand for complete separation in a state or territory of our own. Thoughts? That's what we believe. That's what we want. That is the best and only solution. I don't have to reiterate it, but I do want you to go to digital.finalcall.com if you don't have a Final Call newspaper and just study that point number 4 of what the Muslims want, because that is absolutely the best and only solution to our problem as taught by the most honorable Elijah Muhammad excuse me, and his star student, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So, man, I just wanted to check in and tell you that we still have our another program that we have that will help us with our own economics and our own solutions to our own problems is by supporting Muhammad's economic blueprint. You could donate right now. Go to economicblueprint.org, or if you don't have a computer, which would be kind of funny because you couldn't be watching this broadcast. You can make checks payable to Muhammad's Economic Blueprint and mail it to Muhammad's Economic Blueprint, care of Seaway Bank and Trust Company. Attention Cheryl and Russell, P.O. Box 19522, Chicago 60619. Again, man, it's been awesome. This thing in Ferguson is going to continue to go. And again, look for our interview with our brother editor, Richard Muhammad. I just wanted to stop in and just give you all those pieces and research what we've shared this evening. Follow me on Twitter. I'll give you that information, and Facebook. And remember, man, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Peace. We out. Some images from Ferguson.
With a meaner demeanor, beyond danger. When it lies anger, you'll never witness nothing stranger. This here changer, permanently rearrange back to where you came from. Oh, you don't get it. Oh, you the fittest. It don't matter. Anybody can get it. Everybody gon' feel it. From hell to the ceiling, whole states wiped out, killing by the million. What happened to the buildings and all these children? Don't get mad, it's God doing the killing. Weapons of mass destruction, no power. You can't prepare for the shock of the hour.
The hour here represents war, chastisement, affliction, trial. The earth now is breaking out in little wars all over the earth. The hour is coming.
What's gonna make you understand what the shock of the hour is? Now that we know who the power is. Insurmountable stress, children with gray hair, and mothers leave their newborns right there. No cure, failed suicide. No food, vegetation died. You voted, politicians lied. So used to the pain, don't nobody cry. She loved women, he loved God. This is what it sound like. When doves cry, it don't snow in the winter, it snow in the spring. We rather party and blow green. Breastfeeding who? She tying the tubes.